What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the Giants seem to finally be making a move at cornerback. And if you've been viewing the channel over the last several weeks, you've heard us kind of preview this move and predict this move. The Giants brought in veteran cornerback Adoree Jackson, who we all know, in for a workout this morning, and they're working towards signing him on a one-year deal. This is something that I've been saying for weeks now on the show. I've been saying Adoree Jackson is still sitting out there. He has familiarity with the team, with the teammates, with the organization, the coaching staff. No, he didn't play under Shane Bowen, but guys, he did play under Mike Vrabel and the Tennessee Titans, and Shane Bowen's defensive system borrows a lot of the same concepts from Mike Vrabel's system. So it's pretty much the same defense that he played in many years ago when he was with the Tennessee Titans. It all makes a lot of sense. Adoree Jackson, we know he didn't play all that great last year. This is not some sort of significant upgrade to the Giants' CB2 position if the Giants do wind up signing him. And I will just clarify, they have not officially signed him yet, but it seems like they're going to. They're working on a deal. But this isn't a significant upgrade, but it is still an upgrade in my opinion, and we do kind of want to dive into it, unpack, and discuss the pros, the cons, and really just our general thoughts on the Giants potentially signing Adoree Jackson here. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants, powered by BetUS. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what is your reaction to the Giants bringing in Adoree Jackson for this workout and potentially signing him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing pretty good. And listen, I'm doing better today than I was yesterday because we talked about Joe Shane's press conference, the fact that he said, oh, the secondary is good, we're happy with what we have. And then, less than 48 hours later, the Giants are nearly signing an old friend of ours, Adoree Jackson. Now, we all know Adoree Jackson struggled last year, let's be honest about it, but there is some context that was missing. He did deal with an injury in the middle of that season, and they had him starting the year in the slot where he's never played before, and he got cooked alive, against CeeDee Lamb, against Devonta Smith. I mean, he just could not hang in the slot. It's a different position altogether. You're kind of trying to figure out how to get through traffic. The routes are different. There's more space. It's a lot different of a role than playing on the boundary where you can use the sideline as almost a second defender at your disposal. So it's a much different position. The Giants obviously bringing in Adoree Jackson for a reason. Now, a lot of the beat reporters are like, well, we heard that the Giants organization was saying, we did not like how he played last year. We didn't like the effort he put out. We all saw it on the film. We all saw it on the football field. It didn't look great at times. I mean, there is a reason he gave up 753 yards in coverage last year, including 135 yards against the Los Angeles Rams in Week 17. The effort towards the end of the season certainly wasn't what you wanted to see. With that being said, his career averages are pretty solid. I think last year was an anomaly in a much larger sample size of action where he was a solid football player, for the Giants and also the Tennessee Titans for 4 straight years. So he's only 28 years old. He's pretty young. He's still really at the end of his prime, but he's still more than capable of being a solid athlete, solid player in the secondary. I don't see why this is a bad move. If you disagree with the move, remember what we had yesterday, Nick McCloud and an injured Cordell Flott. Now you have Adoree Jackson, who in his career has 5,400 snaps at his disposal, including 3,400 snaps in coverage. This is a guy who is consistent in the sense that he has experience. He's going to give you some value at CB2. He's going from CB1 to CB2 this year with the Giants. Kind of funny how he flip-flop positions there for us, and then assuming that we do sign him, obviously. And then Andrew Phillips actually taking his number, 22, which is interesting as well. So I don't think the Giants or Adoree Jackson believed that there would be a kind of reuniting here. I think they both thought they'd be going in different directions. But the Giants have a big need, and despite the fact that Joe Shane, said that they thought that the room was good, now they're bringing in a player who's basically going to step in and fill the CB2 role, or at least have a pretty good chance at dethroning Nick McCloud right now. It's not going to be much of a leash there. I'll get your take on that. Do you think Nick McCloud is still considered the CB2, assuming that Adoree Jackson does sign here? Or do you think that they signed Jackson with the intent of him playing CB2 on day one?
Not on day one. I don't think that's possible. Adoree Jackson hasn't practiced with the team all summer. He hasn't practiced with any team all summer. He's been a free agent since January. I mean, he hasn't practiced. He's not conditioned. He is not NFL game time ready. Even if the Giants sign him, yeah, he probably plays in week 1. I don't think he plays 60 to 80 snaps in week 1. I think McLeod probably gets 40 and he probably gets about 20. Like that's probably the split that you see. So they're going to sign him to play, and they're going to sign him to play quite a lot if they do sign him. But they're not going to sign him to be the starting CB2 on the first snap of the season, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that wouldn't make a ton of sense to me if the Giants just shoved him out into the starting lineup week 1 versus Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson after he hasn't played football since January. Doesn't make a ton of sense. So I imagine that if they do sign Adoree Jackson, obviously they have a little over a week here to get him ramped up, get him practicing, get him learning the playbook, but there's only so much that he can learn in 9 days or whatever that it is, and there's only so much conditioning he can do in that time as well. So I don't expect him to be ready to rock and to roll for week 1, but by week 2, week 3, I think he'll be more integrated into the lineup. But hopefully by then, the Giants don't really need him integrated into the lineup, right? The hope is that Nick McLeod or Trey Hawkins, whoever it is, plays so well in the first couple weeks of the season that Adoree Jackson just becomes a depth piece. But the reality of the situation is that he probably will play a pretty significant amount of snaps this season. And I don't have a problem with that. There's a few things that you said there, Alex, that I want to touch on. Like with Adoree Jackson, the way that he performed last year, you're 100% right. Moving him into the slot was a bad idea. I mean, I'm not going to say that. It was a good idea. It was the right move. It just didn't work out. So it ended up being bad execution. Okay. And then the other thing with Adoree Jackson, and this is something I've said how many times this offseason, Alex, about all of the cornerbacks who were playing in this system last year. The Giants had a bad pass rush, which means the cornerbacks were asked to do way too much, and they were blitzing way too often, which means the cornerbacks were doing way too much. And they were getting beat in coverage all the time because they were running with their backs to the quarterback in man coverage with these blitzes that weren't getting home. Wink Martindale's defense was not good for 2 position groups in particular. It was not good for the edge rushers because they were not pass rushing on a down-to-down basis, and it was also not good for a lot of these cornerbacks because they were playing too much man coverage, especially when you're in your older age like Adoree Jackson is. You're not keeping up stride for stride in man coverage with your back to the line of scrimmage with some of these top receivers in the NFL. It's never going to happen. So Wink Martindale's defense, it had its pros. It forced a lot of takeaways. It was really good for a lot of different things. But earlier this offseason, when we discussed the possibility of Wink Martindale leaving, I was pretty early on an advocate for letting him go and finding a new defensive coordinator. You'll remember that, Alex. I was pretty much like, listen, a lot of pros, a lot of cons in this defense. It's too complex, and it causes cornerbacks to get burned. I think that's a lot of what happened last year with Deonte Banks when he had his struggles, with Trey Hawkins early in the season, and throughout the year, Adoree Jackson as well, because Adoree Jackson found a lot of success in this defense in 2022, this Wink Martindale defense. But in 2023, to me, it felt like everything got even more aggressive. Like the blitzes were happening more frequently, more so on like third downs, and there was more man coverage. I mean, the stats back that up as well. The Giants played man coverage at 0 blitzes more than any team in the NFL last season, at a higher rate than they did the season prior. So they took the Wink Martindale mantra and just like cranked it up to 10. Like they were just like, let's go full Wink Martindale. And I don't think you ever want to go full Wink Martindale. So that's what happened to me in my perspective with Adoree Jackson. I don't think that he necessarily fell off this cliff in his talent and just had the severe regression that a lot of people do. I just think he was playing in a difficult system, and that was the problem for all of these defensive backs. Now, enter Shane Bowen. Enter a guy who plays a more conservative 4-man pass rush, multiple front, blitz here and there, sit down in a lot of zones, and let your pass rushers get to work defense, right? That's what we're getting with Bowen, and that should allow Deonte Banks, Adoree Jackson if he signs here, Andrew Phillips, Cordell Flyer, all these guys should have a much easier time in coverage because of this Shane Bowen style of defense, which again, I'll clarify. Shane Bowen was not the defensive coordinator when Adoree Jackson was there. He became the defensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans in 2021. That was Jackson's first season with the Giants, but he's been with Tennessee. He was with Tennessee from 2018 to 2020 because that's when Mike Vrabel was hired as their head coach. And Mike Vrabel is a defensive-minded coach. It was his defensive scheme that those Tennessee Titans players were playing in. Shane Bowen was just operating the scheme as a defensive coordinator. So Adoree Jackson has not played under Bowen, but has played in the similar defensive scheme that Bowen has kind of taken his own version of and adapted. So there's going to be a lot of overlap. There's going to be a lot of similarities. That means two things. One, Adoree Jackson should be able to pick up on the playbook very quickly, get out there maybe in week one, and start to play as soon as possible. And number two, it should mean that he has less growing pains in the system. He should know a lot of the terminology, he should know a lot of the tendencies, and he should know what he's doing when he's lining up on the football field on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays. So that's like really my way to recap all of the reasons that I'm confident in Adoree Jackson. But Alex, I'm sure that we could dive into some of the reasons that we're not so confident in Adoree Jackson, why this isn't like the patchwork fixed CB2 position signing. And we knew that we weren't going to get that. We knew that the Giants weren't going to sign anyone that fixes this position instantly. But I do see a lot of those pros, like I mentioned. So I'm curious to hear some of your takes on any of the things that I said and reasons why I like this move for the Giants. And then if you have any of the reasons why you think maybe this won't be the best move, I'm curious to hear those as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we just needed anybody with experience at this point. The options were slim. Ahkello Witherspoon, J.C. Jackson, we're not touching Xavier Howard with his legal situation unfolding. And then, of course, Adoree Jackson. There wasn't many options, and the Giants went with the familiar one, the guy that didn't cause a ruckus, when his position was changed, didn't cause a ruckus when, things were kind of not going his way. He was quiet, he was humble. They know they can trust him with the media, and I think that's an underrated perspective when you're playing in New York. You just don't know people's personalities. Anytime you bring in a new personality into a clubhouse, you don't know what you're getting sometimes. They know what they're getting in Adoree Jackson. He's a pretty good guy. So I do think from a personality perspective, he's a good guy to bring back into the equation here, into the fold. However, let's see how he adjusts to being the CB2 now. Let's see how he adjusts to his number being given away. Let's see how he adjusts to a new defense. But as you said, this Shane Bowen defense is going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot more zone. It's going to be a lot more reliance on the front four, rushing the passer. It's going to be a lot more simple. And that's what Bobby Okereke has been saying. That's what everybody's been saying on this defense. The defense is more simple. And I think Adoree Jackson fits a little bit more of a simplistic defense, because when you're throwing blitzers this way, you're throwing blitzers that way, it's mayhem, it's hectic. Yeah, you're going to turn the ball over a bit more, but you're also going to give up big chunk plays. And Adoree Jackson got burned a lot last year on big chunk plays. I think that the whole concept for this defense is going to be, you're going to stop the run, but we're also going to try to mitigate those big chunk plays. It's really going to be about undercutting those routes, getting in front of those routes, predetermining where there's space in the open field. And I know Shane Bowen's defense was not very good with the Titans. I think they had the 27th ranked secondary last year, so they had their issues. But important to note, Tennessee's secondary was horrible. Like, they had no talent in that secondary. So, if you look at the Giants, yeah, we're a little bit thin, we're a little bit inexperienced, but we do have talent there. And I think that the upside is certainly something to be aware of, whereas Tennessee's secondary was just a complete mess. There was not much upside. The talent was thin. Now you got Deonte Banks and Adoree Jackson. That's at least a serviceable combination of corners that you can work with. And we know Banks has the upside to be elite. He just has to get there and needs more reps and more experience against top flight receivers. So we are hopeful in that regard. But, the bottom line is, I agree with you. I think that Adoree Jackson is probably not going to open as CB2, but he will probably win that job pretty fast. I don't know if he'll be starting there in week one, but the Minnesota Vikings went out and reaffirmed their secondary. I think they went out and got Stefan Gilmore to kind of smooth things over, and the Giants were kind of playing coy and waiting and waiting for the chance to go out and get their guy. They probably could have got Gilmore too, and the Minnesota Vikings kind of beat them to the punch, and they had to settle for Adoree Jackson, which I think is fine because we needed an experienced body. I'm not expecting him to be an elite player, you know what I mean? I'm not expecting him to be a great player for us. I'm just looking for competent, just competent, because Nick McCloud I do not trust. Cordell Flott I do not trust. But Adoree Jackson, we know we're getting competent play from. That's really what we're going for here. A front four pass rush that's going to be very, very good. Give our secondary a chance to win these battles, and just be in coverage. Just be there like within a step, be ready to make a play. And I think Adoree Jackson is more capable than Nick McCloud, and I think he's more capable than Cordell Flott. And that's kind of where my opinion lies. Is like, at least we know that there is potential there. I think Nick McCloud's upside is certainly capped. Adoree Jackson, you never know. He could have a good year. Like, he is that type of player. He does have that type of athletic profile. He could have a good season. I just don't think Nick McCloud as a starter, I'm not seeing a good season from him. I'm hoping for average at the best. And that's optimistic in itself, I believe. So I want to be optimistic. I'm more optimistic now that we have Adoree Jackson, a guy that we've seen a lot of, a guy that we at least can trust to be competent. And he's going up against CB2s, right? He's not going up against the top receivers anymore. He's not going up against CD Lamb. He's not going up against AJ Brown. He's going up against the second options. And that's where I think he actually belongs now at this stage in his career. So I do agree in the sense that I'm not expecting much, but I think he will win that CB2 job pretty quickly.
I do too. And one note that I'll say, I know that Art Stapleton mentioned on social media that the Giants were never going to get Stefan Gilmore because he didn't want to play here. So that's just one thing that, because I see a lot of fans always saying that, like, oh, now we have to go up against Stefan Gilmore on Sunday against the Vikings rather than having him on this team. That could have been the solution. I don't think Gilmore wanted to play for the Giants, guys, respectfully. I don't think a lot of players in free agency right now are eager to go ahead and sign with this big blue team, unfortunately, as it may be. But I agree with you. My main take here with Adoree Jackson before we wrap this thing is he elevates the floor of this team. That's it. And that's necessary. You'd rather have a higher floor, I think, in some respects, than just shooting for the highest ceiling. Because I do think that starting Cordell Flat might give you a higher ceiling. He's younger, he's more athletic, he's never really had that experience, so maybe he gets enough experience and becomes really good. Sure, those are possibilities, but those are not realities. The reality is that Adoree Jackson has thousands of snaps to his name, has competed at the highest level in the NFL in the past. He raises your floor pretty significantly compared to some of these other guys, like Trey Hawkins, who started, 4 games last year and got benched. Nick McLeod, who started a few games as a backup last year and will probably continue to be a backup this year. And Cordell Flat, who has only ever played in the nickel cornerback spot. So he just elevates your floor, and I think that's super important. This is a good move for the Giants if they complete it. Clarifying once again, they haven't signed him just yet, but seems like it's moving in that direction, and I hope it does. I hope that they end up signing him. I think it would be a great move. But Alex, do you have any other thoughts here on Adoree Jackson and the New York Giants cornerback room?
For the most part, I think that you made a good point. It raises the floor of this unit, and that's really what we were looking for, just a better floor. But I do want to take a quick break to shout out our sponsor, BetUS, and take a look at a really cool graphic about Malik Neighbors. And we know Malik Neighbors transitioned to number 1. Ray Flaherty's family gives him the blessing to take over that number. Interesting kind of situation. I think it's the first time our number was unretired like this, and hopefully he wears it well. And I know that there's a lot of respect going into that, and I respect the Flaherty family for giving him the number, to be quite honest. But there's some really interesting odds here for Rookie Player of the Year from BetUS that I wanted to float your guys' direction. Obviously, you can hit the link in our description, link in the comments as well. 125% of your return, up to $2,000 on your first deposit. So looking at these Offensive Rookie of the Year odds, Caleb Williams minus 125. Obviously, we're not going to go in that direction. He's probably the front runner. But I find it interesting, Anthony, Malik Neighbors and Bo Nix both at plus 1,000. Bo Nix has nobody on that offense. I mean, it's really going to be a difficult journey for him to win that job. I think Malik Neighbors is going to get at least 30% of the target share for this Giants offense. They're going to feed, as long as he stays healthy, they're going to feed him the rock. I love that at plus 1,000. Why not take a shot on that for $10 and see if you can capitalize for 100 there? I don't see why he can't win it. Marvin Harrison Jr. at plus 650. I don't see why Neighbors is in at plus 650 as well. I think that he has just as good odds as Marvin Harrison Jr. Probably basing it off of quarterback performance. And Jaden Daniels at plus 500 for the Washington Commanders at quarterback as well. So, what are you thinking about Malik Neighbors here? I like plus 1,000. I think he has a much better chance than Bo Nix and certainly Drake May at plus 1,400. But I don't see why he doesn't have better odds than Marvin Harrison Jr. The Giants are building their offense around Malik Neighbors long-term and short-term. I think that he's going to get a ton of targets, a ton of deep threat opportunities, and a ton of red zone targets as well. I think he's going to be their key, their focal, their new Saquon Barkley, but as a receiver. That's kind of be where they kind of focus their attention.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Listen, a plus 1,000 bet, you don't necessarily expect those to hit anyway, so this is kind of a flyer. But for a flyer, this feels pretty good, right? Like, this feels like one of those low probability bets that has a chance. Malik Neighbors is going to be the focal point of the New York Giants offense this season. I mean, if he doesn't go for 1,000 receiving yards, something went severely wrong, right? Because Daniel Jones has been tossing him the rock every single chance he gets in the training camp, in the preseason. And I know that's the big key to the equation here, right, is Daniel Jones. How often can he get the ball to Malik Neighbors? Can he maximize a WR1? Well, he's playing with his back against the wall. Malik Neighbors is more talented than any receiver he's ever thrown to. I think Malik Neighbors is going to get so open so frequently, he's going to get the ball a ton. So between him and Marvin Harrison, who do you like better? Marvin Harrison obviously was the higher drafted prospect. He's playing with Kyler Murray. That's why his odds are better, because he's playing with a better quarterback. But between Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors, I think Malik Neighbors is a little bit more important to his offense, because this is a Giants offense that has been sinking for several years, and now it's asking Neighbors to carry them. So I think Neighbors has a pretty damn good shot at winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's one of the most talented players in this draft class, and the fact that his odds are the same as Bo Nix feels suspicious, right? I think he should have better odds than Bo Nix for sure. So I really like that bet. I think that that's undervalued betting for Malik Neighbors at plus 1,000, and I think that this is a bet that I'm definitely taking.
Yeah, good expected value, just based on knowing Bo Nix, knowing what that offense looks like. They just cut Tim Patrick, so interesting things going on in Broncos land. But yeah, for the Giants, it's gonna be the Neighbors show, man. He's gonna be the guy they want to develop, because he's our long-term piece, right? Like, he's the guy that's going to be the offense, the cornerstone piece of that offense. They want him to get as many reps as possible, because year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and if not into the very far future, he's the guy, man. You know, when his 5th-year option comes around, it's kind of crazy. I think he's like 21 years old. When his 5th-year option comes around, he'll be 25, 26 years old. Pretty awesome. You know, when you think about it in that perspective, we're going to have him until he's 30 years old. We could have him for a decade. You know, like, how cool is that, knowing that Neighbors, if he continues to grow, get better, become one of those top profile WR1s, which he has the potential, absolutely. He could be something really, really special for a long time. He could be a guy in 30 years from now. We look back, remember Malik Neighbors? Remember how good he was? It's pretty exciting, you know? It's awesome to think about.
It's awesome to think about. I hope it's true. I hope that's the way his career goes. But if he is as good as we expect him to be in 3 years, he's about to get paid a disgusting amount of money. He's going to deserve it. He's going to earn it.
I'm fine to pay him.
I'm so happy
as long as a quarterback rookie window is what we need for that type of money.
But you saw that contract that Ayuk just got, that contract that CeeDee Lamb just got. If Malik Neighbors lives up to the hype, I mean, this dude's probably going to be making $40 million a year.
Yeah, honestly, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Ayuk getting $30 million, it's only getting more and more expensive to afford these receivers. But, you know, we'll see what happens long term. I'm pretty sure we have him at under $10 million on average for the next 4 years. So let's enjoy the cheap Malik Neighbors while we still can before we have to make those decisions. And, you know, as I said, really, really good value there at plus 1,000. I'm definitely hammering that, putting a 10 spot on it. Walk away with $100 if you get lucky. Worst case, $10. You know, you skip out on a Starbucks coffee one day. So it's not that bad. But yeah, back to the secondary just for a moment here. I do think that, as you mentioned, the floor of the secondary has been elevated quite significantly. Adoree Jackson experience alone, even if he's not a great player for us, he has over 5,000 snaps in the NFL, my friends. 3,400 coverage snaps. I mean, Nick McLeod doesn't even sniff that. He has under 1,000 in his career. Cordell Flott has barely played any snaps on the outside to begin with. You know, they cut Trey Herndon, cut Darnay Holmes. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in another piece. You kind of texted me before this. They could bring in another guy. I wouldn't be surprised if a player like Desmond King was next on the docket, because they could use slot experience, and they don't have anyone with real slot experience. So Desmond King makes a lot of sense to me.
And he makes more sense to me as well because he's a really good return man. And I think that the Giants, knowing that Gunnar Olszewski is a little bit banged up, it would make sense to bring in Desmond King for defensive depth and for special teams depth. He makes a ton of sense to me, so I'm glad that you brought him up as well.
Yeah, I mean, I see kind of a lot of potential here for this Giants secondary to reinforce things. You know, now the question is, why do they wait so long? Well, Adoree Jackson at his age may have said, I don't want to really go through the summer training camp. I know some team will need secondary support, and I don't have to get banged up or risk injury, and they'll pick me up and they'll still pay me. I'm curious to see what the contract looks like. Maybe 1 year, $5 million, maybe 1 year with incentives. I'm sure it's only going to be a 1 year deal when it's all said and done. But I'm really surprised not any teams saw the value in Adoree Jackson. After we see the contract, we'll get more context into like kind of what his price tag looks like. But surprised there's not much interest in him. You know, could be much lower than $5 million. Could be $3 million with incentives. Who knows? But you know, I know Stefan Gilmore got 10. So, and he got cooked last year when Trayvon Diggs went down. So we'll see kind of how things develop there. But I do think it'll be much less than 10 mil for Adoree Jackson based on what he put on the film last season. But all in all, like, I do think another move is coming. I do think they need more support and depth. I do think that the Giants are being a little proactive, using some of that $13 million cap space they do have. But I'm happier today than I was yesterday, that's for sure. A little bit more of a positive episode after yesterday. The pessimism, many people were upset. But we're just being real, guys. Just being real about this team. We don't cover this team. We don't talk about this team as fans to be like optimistic despite the fact we know there are problems. We're trying to be real, but we want to be positive. Like, believe us. All we want to do is be positive about the success of this team. All we want is for this team to be trending in the right direction. But I want them to prove it to us first. I want them to do it with their words, and I want them to do it with their actions. And sometimes they don't sound very confident, and that really rubs me the wrong way. I'm sure it rubs a lot of you guys the wrong way too. But you know what helps? Winning football games. So if they do that, you can expect nothing but enjoyment and happiness from Anthony and I. That's all we want. That's all we've wanted for 5-6 years now. And I think we're going to get back to that, hopefully, at some point in our lifetime. I just don't know when it'll be, but I hope it's sooner rather than later because I'm tired of being negative, believe me. But in any case, I do think these moves do give us a lot more of a floor. I do think that they enhance the secondary and the defense as a whole. And in general, that is a very good thing going into the regular season.
Yeah, it's huge. And even if you're just looking at this as a depth signing and you don't want him playing starting snaps and you don't think he's going to be playing starting snaps, this is a solid signing for depth, right? Like, the Giants needed more secondary depth regardless. I've said the same stat over and over throughout the offseason, Alex. The Giants' average age in their secondary among the starters is under 23 years old. That is usually not a formula for success. So bringing in a veteran like Adoree Jackson who could stabilize things when the going gets tough, it's just an important move. So whether that be as a depth piece, whether he ends up starting, don't know, don't care. I like the move anyway. I think this will be a good signing for the Giants if they get it done. They haven't gotten it done yet, but I imagine that they will pretty soon because this is one of those situations where a need is being met for a very low cost point and low price point and right in time for the regular season. So I really like this idea for the Giants. It's why we've been talking about it and mentioning Adoree Jackson for several episodes now, and hopefully Joe Schoen gets this right, gets him in here. The coaching staff can get him fit into the defensive scheme, and we can elevate the floor of the secondary, like I said. So it's just a little over a week here until the start of the regular season, guys. I cannot wait. I'm super excited. We got film breakdowns coming out every single week. We got live streams every single week. We got pre-game shows, post-game shows. We got everything for you right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants, powered by BetUS. We'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.